to episode 5 of Mosaf's APIs over IPAs podcast network. I'm Derek Gilling, your host today and CEO of Mosaf, the API analytics platform. Joining me is Nick Patrick, the CEO of API first company Radar. Nick has worked in product roles at Microsoft, Foursquare, Handy. In fact, it was at Handy that he met his co-founder, Kobe Berman, to come up with the idea of an API first location platform. Super happy to have you here today, Nick.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Derek. I forgot this was APIs over IPAs. Maybe I should have poured myself an IPA first to be a more interesting podcast, but I forgot to do that.
No worries, no worries. We'd love to hear just about your journey, starting off in product and then launching Radar, and what were your drivers along the way?
Yeah, I've always been into coding and building things. Built a computer as a kid, and kind of learned to code in middle school times. Got really into science in high school. So when I went to college, I was a double major in biology and computer science, and thought I wanted to get a PhD in computational biology. Realized I hated research and just wanted to build stuff. But was also interested in business and starting a company someday. And so product seemed like a good mix of technical and business. It's sort of cliche, but you get to sort of be the mini CEO of a product. And so took a PM role at Microsoft. Went to business school, ended up working at Foursquare, which is where I met Kobe, my co-founder, and also Tim, our CTO, who joined a little bit later. And then went to Handy, which was kind of the earliest stage company, saw a company go from Series A to Series C or D stage. And it was sort of there that I got the idea to build a developer first location platform. So kind of this journey from always like to build things, always into tech and coding, and just this progression. Product management seems like a good first step, and then ultimately found my way here.
Oh, really glad to hear that, and especially since you're in the product seat, you are in a way a mini CEO. But how is it different, building a developer first platform than what you saw at Microsoft and some of your other roles?
Yeah, I think it's different in a couple ways. Microsoft is obviously a huge company, moves pretty slow. I think I joined in the third year of a 3-year ship cycle, and this was even I was working on their CRM product, their Salesforce competitor, and at the time they mostly sold it on shrink wrapped DVDs, and Microsoft was just embracing the cloud. So I think one way that it's changed is I've kind of gone progressively smaller, and obviously when you're a 2-person startup just getting off the ground, you're running 1 million miles an hour. So I think one difference is the speed. I think building an API company and building a SaaS company is very different than building a consumer company, for example. Very different from Handy where you're building a marketplace. So I think a lot of the same principles apply about understanding your customer and building great product and kind of finding the right speed or level of process. But certainly some things unique to building an API first business, which we can talk all about.
Would love to drill into some of those unique challenges. What's unique about APIs, or especially for the CEOs out there that might be thinking about a new API or developer platform?
Yeah, we I would say our most effective growth channels at, say, Radar were different than our most effective growth channels at Handy, for example. I think when you're working on a B2C company, virality, referrals, coupons are a great way to drive growth. Obviously, having a great product or service drives growth too. One thing about Radar is, as an API, we can collect data through our APIs and send them to other tools, many of which have APIs. And so, lots of opportunities for integrations and partnerships. And that's actually been a key part of our growth strategy at Radar. We plug into tools like Segment or Braze or Amplitude or Mixpanel. Location data is a key input into understanding your customer. It makes sense to be collecting location data and using that to power great experiences. So I think biggest learning for us was just opportunities for integrations and a partner strategy to fuel growth.
Awesome. Definitely, speaking to the Segment integration, some of those other ones, can you walk me through, how do you know where to invest, in terms of new integrations, or the ones that you already have, how do you know if it's working or not working?
Yeah, we think about a couple things. One is, we obviously like to partner with somebody when there's overlap in use cases, there's overlap in sort of target customers and buyer personas, right? And so if the main consumer is, say, a product manager that wants to power a product experience, or a developer that wants to kind of build a best-in-class tech stack for collecting customer data and activating it, or a marketer that wants to maybe activate on this data, do location-based targeting, or triggered campaigns. So I think we look at where is there overlap in customers and use cases where Radar can add value in the same way that the platform that we're partnering with is adding value. I think the other way that we think about it is, we obviously want to make it as easy as possible for developers and startups and enterprises to build great location-based experiences, to collect location data and do it in the right way. And so we think about integrations that just make spinning up those experiences, make collecting and acting on that data easier, right? And if we can save somebody needing to set up a webhook themselves and send some data, manually to another tool, or forward data to a data warehouse and kind of put in the work required to crunch all of that data. If we can just replace that with a turnkey integration where you copy and paste an API key, that's tremendously valuable for our customers and helps them get to value faster. So where is there overlap in use cases and target customers, and then where do we just see opportunities to make it easier to get started collecting location data and building these types of experiences?
Well, definitely, the easier it is for someone to adopt a new API platform, the better it is for your customers and really anyone involved, right? On the flip side, though, we also hear that customer success can be a challenge with developer platforms. How do you scale that out, especially if you keep growing your developer community, ensure that everyone gets the right help that they need without overburdening your internal teams?
It's a great question. One of the challenges of having all these integrations where you're sending data outside of Radar is oftentimes the activation or the value is being recognized and measured outside of Radar, right? And so we're thinking about ways that we can help you activate your data and sort of understand your ROI inside of Radar as well. We look a lot at, is API usage growing over time? Are you expanding your usage of the platform over time? Maybe that's uploading more geofences, maybe that's collecting more location data. If you're using our place detection offering, maybe that's turning on new chains or categories, or maybe it's creating new webhooks or turning on new integrations. And depending on how the product is priced, you can potentially charge more and grow these contracts over time. So that's kind of how we think about it, and we think about ways that we can obviously deliver value and clear ROI with the platform, help our customers measure it, have visibility into it inside of Radar, and then just continue to build new experiences based on location and consume more parts of the platform over time.
Definitely. And speaking to visibility and analytics, super happy to have Radar as a MoSoft customer. We'd love to just hear, what are your current use cases for MoSoft, and where have you found the most success?
Yeah, we started as a geofencing platform, and we realized an opportunity this year to, as I said before, sort of expand the different use cases and building blocks that our platform offered. And we had existing customers that were using Radar for geofencing, for example. Maybe they're sending a push notification when a customer walks into a store, or you open the app inside of a store and they're using geofences to show an in-store mode. Maybe you're showing loyalty or scan and pay features when you're in store, and shopping features when you're sitting at home on your couch. But they also said, hey, we're paying Google Maps an arm and a leg for geocoding or autocomplete or places search. Can you just let us search our geofences and maybe power a store locator or power an address autocomplete use case? So we launched geocoding APIs, we launched search APIs, we launched routing APIs, so that we could tell you not just, hey, you're 600 meters away from this geofence, you're 4 minutes walking from the geofence as well. And as we spun up all these new APIs, we needed to very quickly instrument them and have visibility into them, right? Our earliest customers, like, how are they using them? What params are they passing? What are the response times? Are we returning a lot of 200s, or are there a lot of 400s, or even 500s? Most was a great tool for us to basically spin up all these API endpoints quickly, give them to customers, but also do so with confidence, knowing that we had visibility into how they were using them, how they were performing, and that's been super useful and just helped us ship faster and move faster this year in a year when speed was really important.
Definitely. It sounds like you've been shipping a lot of new APIs and endpoints over the last year. Can you walk me through, any processes or things that you found to make that a delivery of a new API easier and make sure it's consistent with, the rest of your platform?
Yeah, I think a couple things come to mind. One is, Radar is even before we launch these APIs, kind of collecting and storing a bunch of location data. Might be lat longs, might be the locations of devices or users, geofences. We have a bunch of out of the box, POI data or address data or admin boundary data. And so one of the things we want to be really thoughtful about is how do these APIs fit with our existing APIs, and what parameters are called, what entities are called. Are we making sure that we're sort of naming things consistently? If you're using Radar for geofencing, is it easy to get started with the geofence search API, for example, or the places search API, or do things sort of feel different and disconnected? So we try to be really thoughtful about what stuff was called and how everything fit together. I think the other thing that we thought about was, there were things that could be sort of shipped or productized as an API that could also be spun up as infrastructure to make our geofencing offering better, right? You can offer a geocoding API to turn an address into a lat long. Maybe that's powering address autocomplete or a store locator. But maybe we can also use that to make it easier to import a geofence, right? Maybe you can give us an address for the center pin of the geofence instead of a lat long. And so we thought a lot about how we could spin up some of this infrastructure to power these APIs, but also to make our existing product better. And could we kill two birds with one stone there? So, there were other kind of tactical things too, like how is this exposed in the SDKs? Should we ship this as a beta first, or just kind of open it up to everyone? When do we feel comfortable opening it up to everyone? Is there a quality bar? Or some scalability milestone that we need to reach. So all these considerations went into making sure these were easy for our customers to use, and also kind of scalable and smart for us from an operational perspective as well.
Definitely. And one of the great things I love, looking at Radar is it's effectively a bunch of building blocks. You can choose what you want, in order to build your application such. But when it comes to these different building blocks, how do you actually service that to your customers to say, hey, not only can you do this, but you can also do this, this, and this with the Radar platform?
Yeah, we think about building blocks, and obviously if you're a developer, you kind of just want to know what are the API endpoints that are there, what functions can I call in your SDK, so on and so forth. Whereas if you're a business leader, for example, maybe you're a chief digital officer at a big retailer, or you're a chief information officer at a restaurant chain or QSR. Like, you care about the building blocks, and obviously you want to pick the best tool for your technical team to implement this and move quickly. But you also want to know how the building blocks fit together, right? In a way, you want to sort of buy a solution that solves a pain point, that moves a metric. So the way we sort of square that is we say, let's be very thoughtful and clear about what our building blocks are, like what primitives are we exposing to developers, but also how are they packaged up in really compelling, easy to understand ways for the business buyer, the economic buyer, the executive that's buying this tool. And this is actually something that we're going to be spending a lot of time on next year. How do we package up our use cases and kind of package up all the things that we can solve in a way that feels kind of simple and navigable, but that's also really powerful and compelling, right? And that's kind of how we think about squaring the two.
Definitely. And this brings up a really interesting point around developer platforms. We hear this challenge a lot, which is you are always talking to two different audiences at the same time. You got the developer, then as you mentioned, you have the economic buyer. What are some tips out there for CEOs of developer platforms to think about those in that duality?
Mm-hmm. I think if the economic buyer is an engineer, is also the technical leader, there's a little bit more of like a straight line from kind of self-serve, bottoms-up strategy, everything kind of works together. It doesn't necessarily mean that like the blog posts that a Fortune 500 CTO or CIO wants to consume are like the same as individual developer at a hackathon or something like that. But there's more alignment there. Whereas for us, I think what we found over time is that, at least with respect to our geofencing offering, it's not to say that the economic buyer is always non-technical. Like that's definitely not true. But we just sort of split the two and say, hey, like let's be really thoughtful about developer experience and make sure that if technical folks are using the product or evaluating the product or integrating the product, that they have a great experience. But that we're also speaking to the the business leader, the economic buyer as well. And at the end of the day, if the economic buyer is a business leader, that means you need to tell a compelling story there, and maybe your growth strategy should be focused on that. Not necessarily developer signups coming from Hacker News or some channel like that. And that's okay if that's what works for you.
Definitely. When it comes to developer experience, how do you actually organize that and set that up as a process? Is that a single owner that owns developer experience? Is that more of a way of thinking across Radar itself? Sometimes we hear this part of product team, sometimes part of developer relations. Such an ambiguous role.
Mm-hmm. Right now at Radar, our product team is the primary owner, but I think you're right. What do your landing pages look like? Are they speaking to technical personas? And that's a marketing thing, right? Do you have a presence at hackathons, for example? Maybe that's a developer advocacy or developer evangelism thing. Right now, the product team primarily owns it, and we think about a couple different things. We think about developer signups, obviously. We also think about activations. Once you sign up, are you making your first API call? Are you continuing to make API calls, which is an indication that you've maybe gone to production or integrated this into your app? There's also NPS. Once you start using the product, is it great and delivering value and easy to use, and you want to tell your friends? And then we also think about net revenue retention. Like I said, like are you expanding your usage and calling different APIs over time? So I think our primary focus is on making the integration as simple as possible. Importing geofences, installing the SDK. How do we make that as simple as possible? And it really comes down to documentation and onboarding. And is the dashboard easy to use or navigate? And I think a balance that we're sort of working on striking is, I think thorough docs can be great, but they can also feel overwhelming sometimes. And so how do you kind of strike that balance of simplicity and brevity with, completeness and thoroughness? But that's really how we think about it. And, who owns it today? And also I would say, we built out a really great engineering team. We've just started to build out our product team. And, even though as a product person, I think our product team is better product people than I was. And that's kind of fun. And so, transitioning some of this off of my plate and onto our product team's plate is a focus as well.
And just referring to the developer documentation that you have, how do you keep it up to date? A big challenge we hear all the time is, it just gets out of date or the wrong endpoints are there, misspellings and that type of stuff. And who owns it?
Yeah, historically I've owned it actually, and I was talking to a developer growth leader at Twilio, and I think in a lot of API first companies the founders own it for a while. I think you raise a good point, which is we've talked about consistency, right, and quality, and this is true of anything, not just maintaining docs, but if you have 5 people touching something or 10 people touching something instead of one. It's easier for stuff to sort of get out of sorts or get disjointed. That being said, like I have a lot of other stuff to do, right? So it's easy for me to be a bottleneck. So what we're sort of working towards is a system where anybody, and really in practice, it's our customer success team, it's our solutions engineering team, and it's our engineers and product team as they ship new features can sort of input and say this is missing or this should be added. We sort of group it, prioritize it. And I think in the future, we want to get to a place where anybody can propose an edit to the docs, and there's some sort of approval or review process. I spoke to a very early product person at Segment, and it sounds like, I don't know if this is actually true, but they imposed a rule pretty early on where you couldn't answer a customer question unless you sent them a link to the docs. And so it sort of forced you to add it to the docs or, refactor the docs as appropriate before you went back to somebody. And there's definitely been customer questions or troubleshooting or whatever, where it's like, I've answered the same question like 50 different times over the last 3 years. Like, we probably should just add this to the docs. So I think some forcing functions like that can be helpful as well.
That's a really good point. We've been actually following that quite heavily, where there has to be a link to some landing page, whether it's docs or case study or something else, rather than just copy paste that snippet of a email.
That's great.
What's next for APIs though? There's a lot of new API first companies coming online here, especially with COVID. Where do you see the future going?
Yeah, I think we're still just getting started. We look at Twilio's acquisition of Segment as something that's really exciting. We did we were part of a marketing campaign with Segment called the Platform of Independence, where the thesis or the argument was that the best customer experiences are powered by best-in-class platforms, best-in-class APIs, kind of tightly integrated together, as opposed to kind of monolithic, clunky platforms. And obviously we see location data as a critical input to that. There's all sorts of different inputs to understanding your customer, building great experiences, but we see location data as a critical input, and it's just not being leveraged enough yet. 2020, certainly an interesting year. If you think about it, the physical world is kind of more varied from place to place than ever before, and how we interact with it is more critical than ever before. So thinking about product experiences you're delivering for your customers, or you think about messaging that you're sending to your customers, like the situation on the ground is pretty different from state to state, city to city, country to country, right? And not enough folks are taking advantage yet. So I think we're going to continue to see kind of integrations and synergies that help you kind of do more with your data, and understand your customers, understand your users better. And I mentioned like integration and partner strategy is very important for us. Like, we're really excited about the partnerships we have in place today, but thinking about ways to do more, to go deeper, to expand those partnerships, to just make it even easier for folks to collect location data in a thoughtful, privacy sensitive way, and build product experiences off of that.
Awesome. So my last question is really around new grads and other folks that want to move into a product management role of an API or API first team. Any tips for them, or in terms of reading material or what they should be looking at?
One thing that we kind of keep coming back to as a product team on our side is, obviously we have amazing product folks and amazing engineers, and they're all used to using amazing developer tools, right? And they know where the bar is, right? Like, you've used a Stripe, you use a Twilio. We should be holding ourselves to the same standard, right? And to sort of know what that standard is, and to really understand how developers work and how they operate and what they need to be successful, or their non-technical counterparts that are sort of consuming the experiences or the data sets built off those building blocks. You have to use the tools, and you have to know where the bar is, and hold yourselves to that same standard. So I think developing kind of a firsthand knowledge of the great developer tools, there are patterns you can follow, is super important. I think that's true if you're a product manager. I think if you're talking about being a founder, one thing that I would recommend is, I worked on a couple failed startup ideas before Radar, and I did it as a solo founder. It's really hard. It's not to say it can't be done, but unless you get lucky and your open source library goes viral, which is possible, you gotta be able to sell and distribute as well. And so find a partner or a co-founder that complements you. And I was sort of the technical co-founder, product engineering, and my co-founder Kobe, who I met at Foursquare, in sales and BD, like really good at just grinding, booking meetings, selling SaaS. And I've learned a ton from him, and that gives him energy. The product and engineering and kind of businessy stuff gives me energy. And so to find a co-founder that complements you so that you can understand what it takes to build a great developer tool, and actually build it, but also distribute it and sell it, is really important. And at least for me personally, like being a PM was the way that I sort of built a network and made these connections that made it possible for me to start Radar a couple of years later.
Definitely. No, that's a really good point. You have to both build and sell, right? If you build only, then well, that's not a full company. And if you can only sell but don't build anything, that's not a full company either, right? So
sometimes you build it and it will come. Yeah, sometimes you build it and it will come, but I would say more often than not, that's not true. So you gotta figure that out as well.
Well, cool. Well, thank you very much, Nick, for being on our podcast today, and look forward to see what next year looks like for Radar.
Thanks, Derek. I think it's about time for an IPA, so I will as soon as this call ends. Yeah.
All right.
Thanks,
Have
Derek.
a good one, and have a happy holiday.
All right. Likewise.